170 ships per day. That is how many vessels thread through the Taiwan Strait on an average morning. Tankers, container ships, bulk carriers moving everything from crude oil to consumer electronics to the grain that feeds Southeast Asia. Now imagine the Chinese Navy closes that lane. Not a rumor, not a threat, a real blockade. In December 2025, the People's Liberation Army ran a full rehearsal, encircling the island, targeting its ports, cutting its sea lines. They called it Justice Mission 2025. The world watched and kept shipping. For now, the Taiwan Strait is a strip of water 110 miles wide at its narrowest point, separating the island of Taiwan from the Chinese mainland. It connects the South China Sea to the East China Sea, funneling traffic between the ports of Northeast Asia and every destination south and west. Singapore, the Indian Ocean, Europe, the Gulf. The strait is not technically the only route, but it is by far the most efficient one. Ships avoiding it would have to swing hundreds of miles east around Taiwan, adding days to every voyage and burning fuel that raises freight rates across the board. Geographically, it sits at the exact hinge between the two most commercially active seas on the planet. Taiwan itself exists where it does because of a 1949 civil war that never formally ended. The nationalist government lost the mainland, retreated to this island, and the People's Republic of China has claimed it as sovereign territory ever since. For 75 years, an informal median line down the middle of the strait kept both sides from pushing too hard. That line held, until it didn't. The PLA began routine crossings of the median line in 2020 and by 2024 had made that line functionally meaningless. The strait is no longer divided. It is contested. Over 1/5 of all global maritime trade by value transits the Taiwan Strait each year. Roughly $2.5 trillion worth of goods. Nearly half the world's container fleet passes through these waters. Cargo ships account for 60% of all crossings. According to the UK Office for National Statistics, 2023 saw approximately 200 ship crossings per week, making this the second busiest maritime passage on Earth, behind only the Strait of Malacca. Unlike Malacca, the Taiwan Strait has no alternate shallow water bypass. If it closes, the detour is the entire eastern Pacific coast of Taiwan, hundreds of extra miles for every ship every day. But the strait is only half the story. What makes Taiwan existentially different from every other choke point is what sits on the island itself. Taiwan produces over 90% of the world's leading-edge semiconductors, the chips below 7 nanometers that power artificial intelligence, data centers, smartphones, and advanced weapon systems. TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, held 67% of the global pure play foundry market in the fourth quarter of 2024. No competitor is close. Samsung holds 12%. Intel's foundry business is a fraction of that. Taiwan's total semiconductor output reached $165 billion in 2024, a 22% increase year-on-year driven entirely by AI demand. If that output stops, there is no substitute. The supply chains that make the modern economy function would begin to seize within months. Control over this waterway and this island has been a live military question since 1954. When the PRC first shelled Taiwanese, held islands and triggered a crisis that brought the US and China to the edge of nuclear conflict. The informal median line, drawn by an American general in 1955, held as a tacit red line for nearly 7 decades. Then came the exercises, Joint Sword 2024A in May, triggered by the inauguration of Taiwan's new president, Joint Sword 2024B in October, which introduced China Coast Guard vessels conducting simulated cargo inspections of civilian ships, rehearsing in plain view the legal framework for a blockade. Thunder 2025A in April, and then Justice Mission 2025 in late December. The largest and most aggressive yet, rocket artillery fired into Taiwan's contiguous zone, declared exercise areas overlapping Taiwan's territorial waters, and a combined arms simulation of port quarantine and sea denial so detailed that U.S. analysts described it openly as a dress rehearsal. Each exercise moves the baseline. What was once an emergency provocation becomes routine. What was routine becomes the new floor. By early 2026, China's military posture around Taiwan bears no resemblance to what it looked like 5 years ago. The economic math of a closure is not theoretical anymore. Carried, Bloomberg Economics modeled a Chinese blockade of Taiwan and found it would produce a 5% contraction in global GDP in the first year alone, comparable to the 2008 financial crisis or COVID-19. That number captures shipping disruption, supply chain collapse, financial market contagion, and the near-total halt of advanced semiconductor output. A full military conflict between the U.S. and China would push that figure toward 10%. Chatham House publishing in April 2026. concluded that a Taiwan crisis would cause substantially more global economic damage than a closure of the Strait of Hormuz, the chokepoint most analysts had previously treated as the world's most dangerous. The reason is simple. Hormuz carries oil which is fungible. It can be rerouted, drawn from reserves, replaced by other producers. Taiwan carries something that cannot be rerouted or substituted, the specific industrial and engineering knowledge embedded in facilities that took decades to build. Staffed by a workforce that cannot be replicated overnight anywhere else on Earth, you cannot strategic petroleum reserve your way out of a semiconductor famine. So here is the scenario that keeps supply chain analysts awake. China does not invade. Invasion is messy, costly, and uncertain. Instead, China quarantines. It declares Taiwan's port subject to inspection. It positions Coast Guard vessels in the strait. It makes insurance unaffordable. Ships begin to self-divert. Taiwan's exports slow, then stop. Its LNG terminals, all on the west coast, all facing the mainland, cannot be resupplied at all. Within weeks, carried. The lights start to go out on the island. Within months, every electronics manufacturer in the world faces allocation decisions they have no good answers for. The Taiwan Strait is not just a shipping lane. It is the single narrowest point in the industrial chain that built the modern world. And right now, that point is being measured, rehearsed, and pressured by the only power with both the motive and the military capacity to close it. 170 ships a day still pass through. The question is not whether someone is planning to stop them. The question is when the rehearsal becomes the real thing.